Hello everyone, I'm Aditya Kumar. I am the Chief Technology Officer at Advisor.com, and now we'll be starting with Angular. Okay, so this video is all about getting an introduction to Angular, how to set up the environment, etc. Okay, we won't be deep diving into some concepts, and we'll be taking it very slowly, because it's really critical that you understand each and everything associated with Angular in a deeper way before you proceed to the next level. Or, to be very frank, I would focus on the application more rather than the theory part, because like you must have already noticed, I follow a different kind of approach in training, and I follow reverse engineering kind of an approach. So in this case also we'll be doing the same. We'll be writing some application part. Okay, then towards the end, once we are all done and dusted and we know all the concepts, then we'll be moving on to the theoretical knowledge a little bit. Okay, so let's move on to the basics. Okay, before that, you should be comfortable in the following concept. Okay, so this is very critical because we are going to be writing some high-end code in comparison to what you've been writing till now. So it's very important that you are very comfortable with basics of JavaScript, basics of ES6, which is a modern variant of JavaScript. Then some introduction to TypeScript, which is very critical because a lot of code in Angular is written by default in TypeScript. Okay, and TypeScript is the base language for Angular to be begin with. And then basic knowledge of classes, methods, etc. Written in JavaScript. That is the object-oriented way of things in JavaScript. So these are the things that you should be a little familiar with, or to be frank, you should be a little comfortable with before proceeding to the next levels. Okay, moving on. Okay, so let's go through the checklist of the concept that we'll be covering in this video. This video, like I said, it would be mostly about installation, etc., rather than going into the concepts. So first of all, we'll be setting up an environment, which is basically my way of saying just creating a folder in your computer where we'll be storing all the files. Then we'll be installing the Visual Studio Code, which is the IDE that we'll be using using for this development. It's the official IDE recommended by Angular team also. We'll know why. Okay, and then we'll install Angular CLI, which is a command line utility. I'll give you more details about it later on. Then we'll create the first Angular application using terminal, which is a very cool way, trust me. Let's get to that on later on. And then we'll run our application, and then we'll have a quick look at the project, just to see what kind of files are there, what kind of essential items are there in that folder. So let's start with the first one. So the first to do on this checklist is installation of Visual Studio Code. Let me just put up my browser window in front of you and see what it is all about. So as you can see, Visual Studio Code, it's a software by Microsoft team, and they have done a really commendable work here. And it's actually recommended by a lot of frameworks out there right now. So what's really all this fuss about is it contains features like this, which is first is IntelliSense, which actually gives you auto completion options when you're typing your functions, etc. Okay, which actually reduces your coding effort or your typing effort by a lot and saves a lot of time. Okay, and then it gives you suggestions also, like if you're missing some module, if you're missing some additional file, that also that those all options are there in Visual Studio Code. So I'll be praising it throughout the series. You'll see later on also. Apart from that, it has inbuilt debugging, which is another great feature, which is a very powerful feature in fact. So what happens is, in any part of your code, if you create a simple mistake, as simple as probably leaving a extra space or extra comma or extra semicolon, just to give an example, it will pinpoint that there is a particular error in that code. Okay, and it will not run your application till the time you correct that error. Okay, so it's very adamant about it, and which is actually a very good part of this, or good feature of this product. Okay, so you'll see that also in the action. And yeah, as you can see from this, you can just download it from going to the official website, or you can just type on Google download Visual Studio Code, and you'll get to this web page. It's right now showing me files for Linux because I'm in Linux environment, but you can choose according to your operating system, whether it's Windows, whether it's Mac. Okay, all the files are available, as you can see in the footer also. So we'll be exploring Visual Studio Code as on the go, on the fly when we are coding our Angular application. I won't be deep diving into it right now. It's very easy. I've just installed it already in my system, so I'm not downloading it in front of you. It's just like installing your VLC, probably VLC player or something like that. So any normal software. Okay, no extra knowledge or no programming knowledge is required. So just click the download button, let the files be downloaded on your computer, and then double click it to install it. Okay. And Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so the next thing on agenda is installing Angular CLI. What is Angular CLI? As the definition given here, it's a command line interface for Angular. For the people who are already coming from a developer community, you must have already understood what it means. For the people who have not used such tools before, I'll just put it this way. So developers around the world, they tend to use terminal a lot. Okay, in case of Mac or Linux, it's called terminal. In case of Windows, you can use command prompt to do the similar action. Okay, and these softwares are installed on terminals. They don't really come, you open up like a UI in front of you. Okay, they're just used through terminal or command prompt, and they are used to perform various action during development. In our case, it's Angular CLI. For installing Angular CLI, you have to run this command npm install g Angular CLI. But for even doing that, as you can see, it uses a thing called npm. Okay, so you'll have to install npm first in your computer. Now, I'm not going to go into the installation of npm and Node.js in this video. Because it's a little tricky process. It depends from system to system. So what I've done is I've created a PDF document that I've attached with this video, which contains step-by-step instructions on how to install Node.js and npm in your computer. Okay, and run it. So now you'll ask me a question, why Node.js? So just to give you input, like npm stands for Node Package Manager. It was initially created to manage packages for Node.js environment only. It runs on Node.js environment. Okay, but now it contains packages which are essential to the whole JavaScript community. So that's why we are using npm packages in Angular also. Okay, so it's like a package manager. You can think of it as a searchable repository of all these packages. When I say package, I just mean that any file that can be useful for you when you're doing JavaScript related development. For example, jQuery, I can call jQuery as an npm package. Okay, or Bootstrap as an npm package, which is there already. You will see this in the coming part of the video, that all these are available as npm packages. So the idea is to make make the life easier for the developer, and for doing that, installation, removal, or such things should be done very easily. So all these are functionalities for npm. We're not going to go into the details of npm because it's a very big topic. Okay, what we are going to deep dive into is the need to know basis. That is like we'll be going only through the concept that we need to use. Okay, and so I would like you to just pause the video here, download the documents that are attached, install the software that are associated with that, and then come back here and run this command on your terminal, which is npm install g Angular CLI. Once you do that, what will happen is it will install Angular CLI globally, and you will be able to run the associated command, which is ng-new, ng-generate, etc. And you'll be able to take benefits of it. Now you'll ask me this question, why I am making all this effort. We have, before even writing a single line of code, it's already getting tricky. There are so many installations. Okay, but trust me, once you get into it, once you use your first command, which is ng-new, you'll know why you made all this effort. It seems like it's a waste of time. It seems like it's taking up a lot of time to install all these softwares, but trust me, once you start using them, it's going to save a lot of development time on your end. Okay, so just pause this video here and install the softwares and come back. Okay, at this point, I'm assuming that you've already installed Visual Studio Code and installed Angular CLI on your computer. Now what we are going to do is we are going to use the Angular CLI to generate an application. So let me just put my terminal in front of you. So guys, I'm using Linux as usual, and it contains terminal. In your case, you can use Windows command prompt. Okay, if you're using Windows, or if you're on Mac, again terminal is the best option to go with. Okay, although you can use the terminal which is built in Visual Studio Code also, we'll see later, but for the time being I'm using this terminal. Okay, so I've already logged into the folder where I want to create my application. Right now it's empty. There is no folders there. Okay, so I'm going to create my application by running this command, which is ng-new and the name of the application. Okay, so the name of the application is very critical here. Let me just increase the size so that you can see it clearly. Okay, yeah. So ng-new, so the name of the application is very critical. It's what it's going to do is it's going to create a folder with that name. Okay, so in our case, I'm just going to write it as blog front end. I'm creating the front end for a blog application here in this series. Okay, to teach you the basics associated with the Angular. Okay, so I'm going to name it blog front end. Let's see. So guys, this command actually takes up a lot of time. Okay, as you can see, it created some folders and some files. Okay, and then it's taking some time to install packages via npm. Okay, in an average case scenario, so I'm running this on a system with 8 GB RAM and with a i5 processor with which is 6th generation, and it usually takes me at least a minute of time to generate all these files. Okay, so this command takes a lot of time. If it's taking too much time on your end also, don't think there's a problem with your computer or something. It's just built this way. Okay, you will have to be patient a little bit. So I would just forward the video from here. Okay, I don't want you to go through the pain of seeing this all. Okay, and we're just going to continue once this is all installed. Okay. Okay, now I think it's already installed. So yeah, as you can see, there is a folder called blog frontend, which is exactly the name of the application that we created. It is already created in this folder. Let me just get into this folder and see what all is generated. Okay, as you can see, it's a lot of files that are there. Okay, 3 folders are there. Then there's 1 2 3 4 5 6 files that are there that are generated along with it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this file in Visual Studio Code and show you what they all are, and show you why you went through all that effort of installing all those softwares. Okay, how big these files are. So the good part is, you can actually access Visual Studio Code directly through terminal in a particular folder. All you have to do is run this command code, CODE, and then space and then dot. Once you press enter on this, what happens is it opens Visual Studio Code with that particular folder. Okay, now let me quickly put up Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now as you can see on your screens, Visual Studio Code is open. Just make it a little big to occupy the whole screen. Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, it's really beautiful to begin with. I can cut the welcome screen, and you can see that there's a blog front-end folder that is open in the left-hand side Explorer. Okay, so we're gonna walk through Visual Studio later on. We're not just going to be focused on that. As and when we code, you'll see that a lot of functionalities are there, but we're not going to focus our efforts on that right now. As you can see, these are the sets of the file that are generated. Okay, we're not going to go into the details of each and every file right now, because every file serves a different function. Okay, so when we get to that particular function, we'll be talking about that particular file. Okay, right now your focus should be on 2 particular folders. That is, one is node modules. Okay, as you can see, there is a lot of modules that are already installed along with this. Okay, so you must have already guessed by now that by seeing this that Angular itself, what it does is it's a collection of a lot of node modules. Okay, by default it includes all those node modules here, and then starts the application. Okay, and now there's a source folder also which contains a lot of files. Okay, so but now right now you must be asking a question, very basic question, is what did we achieve by doing this? Okay, what exactly did we do? Is it just a bunch of files that are randomly generated, or is it really solving some purpose? So let me just quickly take you to what it does by running a command that is ngserve. So when I run this command ngserve on my folder where my files are, let's see what happens. So this is the next Angular CLI command that we are using. It takes up a lot of time to run. My system is a little bit faster, like I told you, so that's why it's taking a lot less time. If you're using a 4 GB RAM or something less than that, it's probably going to take a little more time. Okay, so it ran a tad bit faster on my system because of the speed, but it may take some time. You'll have to be patient. Okay, and the beauty of it is you don't have to run it again. So I'll tell you why later on, but for the time being I'll just so what it does is it's showing me a bunch of code here which is looking quite confusing. Okay, so ignore all that. What it's right now showing me in the top is ng live development server is listening on localhost 4200. Okay, open your browser on this port. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my browser in this port by clicking on it, by clicking on this link. Okay, it's open in my browser. Let me put my browser in front of you so that you can see this. Okay, so as you can see, this localhost 4200 is open now, and there's a message here, welcome to the app. Okay, and it's showing me some links, etc., and there's an icon of Angular. So what did we really achieve here? We were able to create our, hello world application, as we people call it. Okay, in usual programming languages, the first program that people read or write, is hello world application. So this is our hello world application. The only difference, from those application to this is it's already full of a lot of things. It contains the UI, it contains the basic code that is associated with that. Okay, and it contains certain links also, and you'll see that a lot of functionalities inbuilt while we are exploring the code. So what did we exactly achieve by running this command is we were able to create what is called a boilerplate application. Okay, so what do you mean by a boilerplate application is it's an application that acts or serves as a base for your main application development. Whenever you are creating something very big, whenever you're working on something very huge in terms of size, whether it's a backend application or a front-end application, you always prefer to have a boilerplate application with you. Okay, so this is your boilerplate application. What we are going to do is we are going to create a blog application on top of it. Okay, and guys, this is not just like this is the most suggested way from Angular side also. These guys also have suggested the same thing, that we should be using the boilerplate application rather than creating our own application from scratch. So this is the suggested approach in industry also, and I would recommend you not to go with the instincts that people get sometimes, that okay, I am not going to follow the boilerplate, I'm just going to create something from scratch. Okay, please don't do that, because there is a very good chance that you'll end up creating a lot of errors, and you'll definitely not be able to use the power of the tools that are there with Visual Studio Code or Angular CLI, or app built in using Angular itself. Okay, so please don't do that. Just run this command ng new, create the application, and then modify this whole boilerplate application to make it look the way you want it to be. Okay, so that's the usual approach that is followed in the industry. And now going back to the code, let's see what happened really. So I've opened Visual Studio Code again on your screens, and the whole thing that you see in front of you, it's all contained in this particular folder, that is src or source folder. Okay, so you can see there's a app folder, there's assets folder, there's an environments folder, etc. Okay, and we're not really concerned about these things right now. Okay, we're going to jump it in the next part of the video. Okay, but for the time being, I guess it's pretty clear that what really happened here, by running one simple command, you were able to generate so many lines of code, which would have taken a copious amount of time on your end if you had to do it all on your own. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to walk through these files that are generated by default one by one from the top. So let's do that. Okay, now the next thing on the agenda is to get a clear picture of what happened till now. Okay, we don't want to be in a situation where we don't really understand what's really going on, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through each and every file, telling you the functionality of it. We're not going to get into the details of the file or the code hidden in it, like I told you, because it really doesn't concern us right now. We're going to be looking into the code of only the files that we are concerned of right now. So let me just put up Visual Studio again in front of you and go through each and every file. So first thing which we see here on our screens is E2E. That is a folder which contains certain files. Okay, so as a developer, I want you to completely ignore this file for the time, or folder for the time being. Why? Because it's used for end-to-end testing. Okay, so as you can see, it's really not JavaScript that is written here. Describe, before it these things are not part of JavaScript. You already know that by now. Okay, so why E2E folder is there is because Angular, you know what they have done is these guys have brilliantly coded Angular in a way where they have integrated testing along with the application development. So if you are a person who knows both the things, that is testing as well as application development, you know, when we are talking about testing, we are talking about unit testing here, which is application level testing. So if you are a person who knows both the things, you can do both of them simultaneously in the application itself. Okay, so this makes the life of a developer also very easier, a tester also very easier. Okay, and both can work collaboratively on this project, and there is no clashes between them because the folders are separate. Okay, and you can write code according to whatever specs that you are there, and you know, you can test the code according to whatever specs that are there. So as a developer, I really want you to forget this folder for the time being, especially in this beginning levels. Okay, probably we'll look at it in the advanced levels a little bit. Okay, but we are definitely not going to write test anywhere because we are here to become developers, not testers. Okay, both are different professions. Each of them are, they have their own difficulty level. Okay, and testing is not a part of this curriculum which we have. Okay, so we're going to focus on the development part. So forget this folder for the time being, don't use it, don't touch it. Okay, same goes for the folder which is here, same goes for the file which is here, that is karma.conf.js. Okay, this is again the test runner configuration, which is karma. Okay, I don't want you to play with this because again it can cause a lot of trouble in the basic application and it has nothing to do with development. So don't play with these files, which is karma.conf.js and E2E. Okay. Okay, next, moving forward to the next folder, that is node modules. Again, like I told you, it's just a folder which contains all the modules that are attached or that are required in the beginning. As you can see, there are a lot of them. Okay, so all these things are required in the beginning for the Angular application to work. Now a question may arise in your mind. Okay, by default, if my boilerplate application itself contains these many folders, isn't it going to be a little slow? Because it's definitely calling all these folders by default, right? That's the usual thing that comes in your mind. But let me tell you, that is not the case. These modules are actually lazily load, or you can say they are called on the go. Okay, so what happens is they are injected into the application only when they are required. Okay, some of them probably would be there from the beginning itself, which are the core modules, which are the part of Angular command, which we'll see later on. But for most of these modules will be called only when they are needed or at the runtime. Okay, and once the runtime is done, okay, then they have no need to be there. So you can think of them as a supporting element more rather than thinking of them as a base element of the application. Okay, so don't worry, they're not making your application slow, they're actually making your application much faster. I know it's a little difficult to comprehend or digest at the point being, because it doesn't really make sense, right? Why use all these files? But as and when we are creating the application, you'll see that they have a lot of utility. They contains a lot of functions, a lot of methods that are there, which actually you can use with just 1 or 2 lines of code, and you can reduce a lot of coding effort. If you are just programming this application in JavaScript or jQuery for that matter, it would have been really troublesome. But with these things there in place, which is node modules, it's going to be a lot easier. Moving forward to the next folder, that is SRC or source folder. It contains a couple of, or I think 3 subfolders and then a few files. Now let me go through that one by one. Okay, first is app folder. So this is the most critical folder in your application. Most of your time is going to be spent on this folder only, which is app folder, because all the development that you'll be doing will be inside this folder only. Okay. Now I think the rest of the folders may seem a little useless, don't they, when I say this? But trust me, every one of them have their own importance. I'll go through that. But for the timing, let's inspect these files. First file is app.component.css. It's pretty empty right now. Okay, but as the name suggests, it's .css file, so it must be for styling. Okay, there is an app.component.html file, which, okay, so it contains a code, and as you can see, it's the code that you saw on the web page. Here are some links. Welcome to the Angular and then there's an image. Okay, so it's basically the code which you saw on the local host when we ran the application in the browser. So this is by default there in the application. Again, you can tweak it according to your need, but you see there is a variable called title, or when we were looking at it in the browser, we saw Angular written there. Okay, but here we are seeing it as title. Oh, sorry, we saw app written there, we are seeing here title. Okay, which is kind of which we don't understand right now, but trust me, we'll be getting into it later on. For the time being, you have to just know that all these parts that are there, this app.component, app.component.html, app.component.css, all they are doing is they are loading the application which was there in front of us. Okay, and you must have probably guessed by now that this as the name suggests, it's not basic JavaScript. The file extension is .ts, so it's using TypeScript. Okay, and don't worry, we'll be walking through all these components later on in this video only, but I'm just showing you the files right now. Okay, again, you'll find out a file that is .spec.ts. So this is again a file that is associated with testing. As you can see, it literally says testbed async, and all the testing commands are there, so you don't have to touch these files. Now a question may come to your mind: why don't we just delete it? Why even keep it there? See, guys, that is not a good practice. That is not a standard practice, because there is a very good chance that later on, when your application is built and deployed, you would want to exercise some level of testing in it. Okay, you may want to build some test, and trust me, it's very easy. Once you look into unit testing, it will seem like a piece of cake, because in comparison to development, it's nothing. Okay, but deleting them exactly is not a good idea, because maybe you're working in an environment or a company where testing team is different, development team is different, so the test team may need these files. Okay, so you should not delete them. You just keep them there. Okay, don't use them, don't touch them, don't make big changes to them, because that can affect the application overall. Okay, at the runtime. And then there is a component.ts file. Okay, you must have noticed one more thing, which is a strange naming convention that they have followed. What they have done is they have name of the folder, that is app, then name dot component dot, then the name of the extension of the file. Okay, we'll look into why it is like that later on, don't worry. Okay, so what it's doing is just creating a component. We'll again deep dive into what component is, what these files do, what these commands or the code that is written here represent later on. And there's a particularly significant file here, app.module.ts. Again, it's looking like a very different kind of a code to us. It's not usual JavaScript, and you're probably not able to decipher it right now, but don't worry, we'll be getting into it. Again, the intent of this file is to initialize the application, initialize our Angular application, tell it what are the modules or what are the things that you would need by default, or what are the things that can be run later. Okay, and then we have an assets folder. As the name suggests, it's to keep things that are associated with this file, with this application. It can be images, it can be CSS, it can be external JS, anything you need to run this application. In most of the cases, people use assets folder to store images. Okay, so anything that you need to run your application, or it's a part of your application, you can keep it in assets folder. Okay, there's an environment folder, which is to maintain the environment. Okay, so when I say environment, what it really means is, so guys, this is a usual industry practice. What people do is they tend to maintain different kind of environment. When they're working in development mode, they keep that environment as development. When they are when they are ready to deploy the application on cloud for general public use, they make the environment production. Okay, so when I say development environment, it means I'm working on this application right now, I'm running it on my local computer, probably on my development server. Sometimes people use it different server, which is a development server. But when I want to deploy it for general public use, what I would ideally like to do is set my environment as production. Okay, so this is the difference between development and production environment, which you should remember, which is quite critical, because later on, by the end of this whole thing, towards the really end of the whole program, you'll see how to deploy the applications on cloud. Okay, so you'll learn more about production and development environment there also. But for the time being, at application level, it's set using this folder. Again, I'm not going to touch this folder right now, because all I'm going to be doing is creating the code here on my local computer, running it on localhost only. I'm not going to put it on cloud or anywhere else. Okay, so I'm really not concerned with this file right now. Another file is favicon. I'm assuming that you already know by now what favicon is. It's the icon that is displayed in your title bar, which is there in the browser, the heading of the tab. Okay, whatever icon you put here, right now it's containing the Angular icon, so that's what you saw there in the website. It's the same thing that is displayed on the title bar. Okay, so if you want to replace that by your own company's logo or any other thing, you can replace this file, okay, or the contents of this file, and it will change. Another file is index.html. Again, now we are a little relaxed. It's looking a little bit familiar to what we have learned till now. So it contains the basic usual HTML code, which is HTML header, then there's a body tag, then it's closing the HTML tag, and in head it has all the meta information, title, base. So the important things to notice here is a couple of things. One is this base href is equal to dash. So this is quite critical. It tells us what is the base path of the application. Right now we are setting it to slash, so whatever the name of our server is, which in our case is localhost 4200, then slash, that's where our application will be. Okay, you can change it according to your needs, but since you are at a very beginning stage right now, you are just learning the basics of it, I would recommend you not to change this at all. Okay, or even this file for that matter. Don't touch this file. Okay. And in body part, there is an app root kind of a tag that is there, which is not a part of HTML, obviously. So this is a part of Angular. Here, everything that is the part of app folder of the system, this app folder, this will be loaded in this body part. So now it's starting to make sense. When I say a single page application, I've already told you that how single page applications work is there is a shell page, and then you load various pages in that shell page without reloading the main page. So this index.html is the main page or the shell page that you're looking at. Okay, this is where all the things happen inside the body tag of this. That's where your application really runs. Okay, the application contents are inside this app folder. Okay, you can create multiple folders inside that folder to maintain multiple components, which we'll be doing in this video right now. Okay, and all that is contained inside this body tag, and that is where it's loaded. Okay, again, a file not to be touched. So your work is kind of making, like, it's becoming more and more easy as the time flies, because there's a lot of file we are not concerned with. Okay, they're just there to make our lives easier. There's a main.ts file. Again, like I told you, it's a simple initialization on what to use, how to use it. Again, you don't have to touch this file. We'll be deep diving into these files later on, don't worry. We'll be learning deep about Angular architecture, but we are like going in a reverse way. We are doing application first and theory later, so that's why I don't want you to bore with the concepts right now. Again, ignore these files also. Polyfill and styles, they're all associated with styling. Test file is with testing. Again, you don't have to touch it. This is us again testing configurations, both the files, so you don't have to make any changes here right now. Okay, and then there is a module definition again file. This file is again not to be touched. Okay, this file which is there, that is angular cli.json. This is the file which is used to maintain the runtime environment. Okay, when you are running your application, what exactly happens? So as the name suggests, is the configuration for your Angular CLI. We are already familiar with this word Angular CLI. So it's the configuration for your Angular CLI. So we are going to be touching this file from time to time based on our requirements. Like you can see there's a style.css file that is there, that is included here. Okay, and you can find this style.css file in your main folder also. Okay, and which is, I think, here. Yeah, so this is the style.css file which is in the source folder. Okay, it's declared here in the main style. So whatever style you declare in this style.css file, it will be there for the whole application. Okay, and there's a scripts folder also, scripts part also. Okay, so whenever you want to include as external CSS, or probably like you're using Bootstrap or something like that, you include it here, and once you include it here, it will be available for the whole application to use. Okay, so this is how this file works. We'll be touching this file a lot. We'll be working with this file a lot from time to time, so don't worry. Apart from that, again, most of the files are associated with testing and environment setup and editor configuration. So again, you don't have to play with these files. As a beginner, please don't touch these files. This is going to be a lot of trouble for you. Okay, and Okay, another important file is package.json, but we'll be looking at package.json in the later part of this video. Okay, so for the time being, we have walked through the folder structure. Okay, and we have reverse engineered the boilerplate application that was given to us. Now let's move to the next part. So till now we have generated our boilerplate application. This is the checklist of things that you need to follow in your usual application development time. When you're sitting there and you're trying to develop the application, first of all, generate the boilerplate application, then use ng serve command to serve the application on localhost and test it. That is very critical because there's a very good chance that there may be some kind of bug that is associated with your system itself that may come there. So you have to first of all make sure that the boilerplate itself is not tainted, it's not buggy or something. Okay, although there is a slight chance that there's a mistake from Angular's end, because that's a very big community obviously. So you have to test it on your environment. Okay, like with whether it's a problem with the environment or system configuration or anything like that. Second thing is, you should always plan your application. That is critical because before having a solid plan, you will end up wasting a lot of time creating components here and there, and like creating the application in bits and bits. Okay, so don't do that. Always plan your application first. We'll be doing that right now in the coming parts. Okay, and then we'll go with the development, and then the next thing is start creating components. So what is components? We'll come to that, don't worry. Moving on. Before proceeding to the actual coding, what we'll do is we will look at package.json file a little bit, like I promised you, and also and npm a little bit. Okay, so let me just open up the package.json file for you. So this is the package.json file. If you come from JavaScript background already, you must be highly familiar with this. This is pretty much used in all kind of JavaScript related development, whether it's front end, whether it's back end, whether it's mobile related development. Anywhere you will find this package.json file. Okay, it contains information about the application. So you can think of package.json file as a file which tells you all about the application that you're trying to write. Okay, whether it's the name of the application, whether it's the version, it's the license, or the scripts that are associated with it. Like for example, when I type ng start, it will serve ng serve command. Okay, when I type ng build, okay, it will tell serve ng build command, and so on. So it defines a lot of scripts. Okay, it tells you the type of the application, whether it's private or public. Okay, if you're setting it public true, private true, it will not be visible on npm if you publish it. Okay, if you set it public, then private is equal to false, then you will be able to find it on npm. Then there is dependencies that are to be loaded. Obviously these are nothing but the npm modules that you installed, okay, or the dependencies that are there with the platform itself, the Angular, okay, which is Angular/animation, Angular/common, Angular/compiler, Angular/core, and so on. So we'll be using these functionalities a lot. Okay, so we'll come to that, don't worry. And then we have development dependencies, which is dependencies which are required for development. So what is the difference between the two? The difference is, one dependencies is for the application part, and second is for the runtime environment, for running the application. There you can see Angular CLI, obviously, like I told you, it's a runtime thing. Okay, and then compiler CLI, Jaspin, this is our for testing, Node is for testing, and so on. So this file actually tells you what is there in the application, what the application is dependent on, and is it private or not, and what are the dependencies in terms of running this application. All this information is contained in this file. What happens is, we usually have this file called jitignore, in this folder, .jitignore. Okay, and what we do is we tend not to send useless folders on our GitHub repository. Okay, so what this files really do is, what this file really does is, this jitignore file, it tells us which are the folders that I don't want to be published on my Git, when I'm pushing my code on Git. As you must be already familiar with Git, all the advantages associated with it. Okay, you must realize the need for using Git in this kind of application, which can go very big in nature. Okay, so you definitely need multiple people working on it. Okay, and package.json is actually then used to build this file later on wherever my application is transported. So just to give you a small example, like this, in this case, node modules is a folder that is usually added in gitignore, okay, because like I told you, node module folder contains a lot of files, okay, and they obviously would be of lot heavier size, okay. So I don't really want to land up in a situation where I'm writing to a git repository where node modules are being shipped every time when I push the code. That doesn't make sense, right? So what I do is, I, instead of sending the node modules folder or such heavy folders directly on the git, what I do is I add them in on git ignore, okay, and I make sure that there is an entry for that package somewhere in that package.json file, okay. And once I transport that code to a server or anywhere I want my application to be used, or probably send it to a friend, okay, what happens is we just download the code there from the git repository. We run a command that is npm install or sudo npm install if you're in Linux, okay, and then you will be able to generate all these folders which are there, that is node module folder or any other folder that you hid in the gitignore file, and use them, okay. So that's the beauty of using package.json file. It's like a package manager for your application, which is local. It tells what are the dependencies of the application, so that you don't need to ship those dependencies every time you want to send the code to somebody, okay. They can just run the command on their end, which is npm install, and they can install these folders for you, okay. Just to give you an example, I'll just run this command for you on the terminal, because it's a very crucial command. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just remove the node module folder, sudo rm rf node module. So this is a command in Linux to remove the folder, okay. And as you can see now, my folder is removed, node module folders is not there anymore, and the command that I was talking about is sudo npm install, okay. Once I run this command, what happens is it's going to fetch the data from package.json, that what are the dependencies, what are the node modules that are required by my application, and it's just going to create those folders again for me, okay, in my end. So this is what the purpose of package.json file is, okay, and this is how it's associated with npm. Okay, so it's going to take time, obviously. Again, it's a very big process. It's taking up a lot of modules, okay. In the meantime, we'll go to our browser and look at the website of npm.js. Okay, so this is the file. So this is a link of the website, that is npmjs.com, okay. And you don't necessarily need to sign up on this or something. You can just directly explore any package. For example, if I look at Bootstrap, which is something I'm very familiar with, Bootstrap 3, okay, so you can see a lot of packages associated with Bootstrap came here, okay. Bootstrap UI, or Bootstrap table, Bootstrap this, React Bootstrap, or something like that, okay. So anything that you want to search in terms of functionality. For example, let's say I want an autocomplete functionality on my website, okay. So I can just find an npm module associated with an autocomplete functionality. In this case, it's for Node.js. I can find it for Angular also, and any other framework I'm working on. And then I can install them using npm install, whatever the name of the package is, okay. So it's as easy as this, okay. This is all you need to know about npm right now, okay. You don't need to go into depths of npm, because we'll be exploring it later on in the parts, and trust me, that's all you'll need to use for the time being. And in the meantime, okay, my terminal is still going on, okay. So it's going to take a little time, like I told you, because there are a lot of files to fetch, there are a lot of folders to be created, and it's all taking time to be done, okay. So I'm just going to forward the video from here and skip this section, because I don't want to do go through the pain of just sitting there and watching this and getting installed, okay. By this point of the video, I'm pretty sure that you are all very confused, probably, or you're definitely bored, because it's all theory going on. till now all we have done is install some applications or software in my computer, okay, and then run some commands to generate some code. Okay, we have not done any actual code. So sorry to kill that all that excitement, but it was really necessary to introduce all those basics to you, because without them there is no application programming that is possible at your end. Now we'll be getting down to writing the actual code. Before that, again, we'll be using another command, ng component, to generate our components for the application. So guys, just to give you a context here, we will be writing a blog application to understand the Angular basics. Now it may seem like a very simple application, but trust me, it will contain most of the concepts that are associated with Angular, and they will be explained in the most easiest way possible so that you can comprehend them very easily and apply the logics at your end. Okay, so in our blog component or our blog application, sorry, we'll have these 5 components. Why I'm calling them component is something I will come to later on, don't worry. Okay, first is app component, which is shell page, which I've already seen, I've already shown you. Then second is blog main component, which is the main component, which is the home page that is going to be loaded. Okay, it will contain the list of all the blogs that are there on the platform. Okay, then there is a blog view component, which will display a particular blog. It's like clicking one of those blogs and it will open up, and then it will show the blog to you. Then there is a blog create component, which will be used to create the blog. Okay, like create some new blog, or something like that. And then we have blog edit component, which will be used to edit a particular blog. Okay, so it will preload the data that is there in that blog, and we'll be able to update that. Okay, let me just quickly run the application on your end to show you how it's going to look like, because definitely that is a little confusing, like which I just told you. And so I already have the terminal open in front of me for that application. So like this slide says, always have the target set in mind before starting the code. That's what they really they'll take away of this is, you have to set the target in your mind. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just showing you the final version of the blog application that will be done in this scale level, okay, to help you visualize the target in mind so that you can go according to that. So let me just put up my terminal in front of you. Okay, so this is where my main application is there. Okay, I'm just going to run ng serve command to run this application on my local host, and I'm going to show you that. Okay, so again, it's going to take some time. Like I told you before, we have to be patient here. You can skip this part of the video. I'll be doing it for you, obviously. Yeah, so now that ng serve is done, I can open my browser and see the final built version. Okay, so as you can see in front of you, this is a very simple blog application. I have not focused too much on the UI. I have tried to keep it as neat as possible, and as it might be already obvious to you, I'm used Bootstrap here. Okay, and that too, the version is Bootstrap 3. Okay, so this is the main view, that is the home page of the website, which contains all the blogs. I've just pretty much posted very simple blogs here. This is blog 1, this is blog 2, and something like that. Okay, and this is posted by admin, that is me, that is date is given there. Okay, and you can read this blog. When I click on read, it opens another view, that is blog view, where the details of the blog are there. Okay, and there are some options that are associated with that. Okay, so this is the second view, which is blog view. You can see the difference in the URL. In the home page, the URL was /home. In the blog view, it's /blog/id. Okay, but since it's a single page application, obviously it didn't refresh. It just felt like a web app, mobile app. You just went to the different view. And when you click on about, also that goes there. Okay, and when I click on post a blog, that goes there. Let me just post a blog for you. So as you can see here, in this application, what has happened is there is some validation check. Till the time these fields are all filled, which is all compulsory, we cannot post the blog. The button is disabled. So we will learn how to achieve this functionality also later on when we are creating the post blog part. Okay, so this is an example blog. This is the description of the example blog. I'm just writing it simple. Okay, in my body I can write something with HTML also. I have created that kind of provision. I'm just going to put some data here, dummy data. and I can select a category here, which is comedy, drama, action, technology, etc. I'll just say comedy, and I'll post the blog. What happens when I post a blog? It shows me a message and then they redirect me to the blog view. Okay, so this is the application that we are trying to build. Now with this view, we can do three different things. We can go back, which is to this, it takes us to the previous page that is there. Okay, or what you can do is you can see the blog you just created in the home page is already added. Okay, and I can also delete a blog. I'll just delete the second blog. When I press on delete, it says blog deleted successfully, and it redirects to the main page again. Okay, and I can also edit the blog. When I click on edit, it shows me all the fields pre-filled there. I can just edit, so I'll just write this is the edited description. This is edited. Let me write this. Okay, when I edit this blog, you can see the description is there in home page, not on this page. So this is edited. This is the example description of the example blog, and this is edited. So we were able to edit the contents of that blog. Okay, so it's a simple create, read, update, delete operation with this additional about us page, which is conventional in website. So I just put it there. Okay, and that's it. So it's very simple application, although there is small things like which are there, like validation checks are there in post and edit functionality, and then there's display of the blogs, then you have delete functionalities. So very basic application. Okay, and we are going to create it from the scratch, step by step. Okay, although this current application that you see in front of you, it's using some external APIs. You at this point I'm assuming you may not even know how to interact with those APIs at all. Okay, or you must have just interacted with some basic APIs in jQuery, but in this level we are going to use a different set of APIs that are provided by advisor.com only. Okay, and you will be taught how to use them and how to authenticate them. Okay, or get authorization for that. So don't worry, but for the time being we'll try to keep the application as simple as possible. Okay, this is the final application that you are trying to build, and it will cover all the basics of Angular as it stands. Okay, now that you have seen the final build of the application that we are trying to create here, we will start with our application. So this is the part where the real fun begins, which is the programming part. First of all, we'll be generating the components that are required by application, which is the components mentioned in the front of your screen, and then we'll walk through them one by one and create the further application. So the command to create the component is ngg component. Okay, although you can do it manually by creating the files and folder and then adding it in the module.ts file, but the preferred way and the industry recommended approach is using the ngg command, and that is comes with the CLI. Okay, so I'm going to go to the terminal. Let me just put the terminal in front of you, and I'm going to run the command ngg component, and the name of the component in this case, first we'll be creating the home component, which is going to be our home page. Okay, so we'll write home. Okay, so always name the components in small letters, and if it's a big name like let's say blog view, we'll put a dash between the names. Okay, we'll see that later on. So let me just create the home component first. When I press enter, it takes a few seconds and it says installing component, and then it's done. Okay, so here is a list of action that it performed while creating the component. First of all, like I told you, everything is going to be there in this src file. So in src/app, which is our main application folder, it created another folder called home. Okay, which is the name of our component, and in that folder it created 4 files. One is the css file, then it's the html file, then it's the spec.ts file, which I told you is for testing, which we don't have to use, and then component.ts file, which is our TypeScript file, which is the main file for that component. And then at the same time it did some updates to app.module.ts file. Okay, now let me just put up the coding window in front of you and show you those changes. So I have my app.module.ts file, which is the main module file which I told you, and there are a few changes to that. First change which you can notice here is this import statement, which says import home component from dash home and then home.component. Okay, notice one more difference here. Although the name of the file is .ts, you have not mentioned ts here, so there is no necessity for doing that. In your import statement you can ignore the last ts part from the name of the component. Okay, and when I import this, it's talking about the TypeScript file, not the HTML file, not the CSS file. It's talking about the TypeScript file. Okay, so and notice the naming convention that Angular creates on its end. It's the H is capital, the C is capital. So Angular follows this convention, and at the same time, while declaring this import statement, it has also declared the home component inside this declarations array inside the ng module directive. Okay, so what does this really mean? So what basically it's saying is, you must have seen already that app component is something that comes by default. Okay, and when I created another component, it just added this to declarations array. So what this array really signifies is the contents of the application. It's just declaring that my application has the following component. As the name suggests, declarations. Okay, it's just declaring what my application contains. Okay, and now let's look at the files that are generated. Okay, so there is an HTML file which just says homework. So by default, this is the message that comes in the component file. The CSS file is empty by default. Okay, and then there is a TS file, which is again a very basic file created from Angular core. Okay, let's have a look through this file, before creating the further component. So first statement is import statement. Okay, which says import component and on init from Angular code. Okay, so this is a by default statement. Okay, which comes in every component. Let me just write it here. Okay, what it's really doing is from the Angular core libraries, okay, which is the part of the Angular core, it's importing these two files, that is component and onInit. Okay, and so this is Angular's way of importing the header files. Okay, if you come from a C++ background, you must have already encountered header files. Okay, so this is Angular's way of extending something that is already built, okay, which is component, okay, from the Angular core into our own application. Okay, so it's just like including in case of jQuery, it's just like including jQuery's header files. Okay, or in previously you must have learned about exports and modules in your JavaScript program. Okay, so that is similar to this. Okay, all it's doing is calling the core file. So throughout our journey of creating this application, we'll be importing a lot of these statements. Okay, some of them are going to be part of the Angular core, some of them are going to be from external modules that will be creating in our application, okay, or importing in our application. Second thing is this decorator. Okay, so when I say decorator, it's whenever you see this @ you are going to call it a decorator. Okay, these are called decorators in Angular. I'll come to what is the function they perform, but before that, let's look at the later part of the code, which is a class. Okay, so this is nothing but a simple class. Okay, which is quite typical in JavaScript. If you have already worked with advanced JavaScript or modern variant of JavaScript, you must have already seen classes. So it's nothing but a class which is implementing this onInit class, which is being imported from Angular core. And there is a constructor by default. Okay, again, as you might be already familiar, a constructor is something that is called whenever a class is initialized or an object of the class is created. Okay, so there is a constructor by default, and then there is an ng onInit. We'll be walking through what these are really later on. But let me tell you why this decorator comes in, where this decorator comes in picture. Okay, so this decorator is basically, enabling this class to become a part of Angular framework. Okay, because if you look at just this class, let's say if we didn't have this decorator here. Okay, this is a simple class. It doesn't really tell you what to do and where to do it, how to interact with a view or something. Okay, but when you look at it from with this decorator, which says @component, which signifies this, what the thing we are talking about is component. Okay, it gives certain properties to it, like it's telling you where is the URL of the template from which you have to load the HTML, where is the URL of the CSS files from where you have to load the styles, and it's giving it a name which is called a selector, which is app home. Okay, so guys, it may not be making sense right now. What I want you to focus on is the application part. Again, I'm repeating it again and again. We are talking about the practical approach here rather than the theory. Don't worry, the details of all these things are going to be covered in a lesson called Angular Architecture, which is going to be towards the end once you have developed the blog application. But for the time being, you have to just know that these are the decorators, these are the classes. The decorator actually perform the functionality of making these classes a part of the Angular ecosystem, and whatever logic you write in these classes using your JavaScript knowledge, that is going to be executed inside that component. Okay, now the first question that arises in your mind is or you must have already figured out by now, if you're the smarter kind, that this is what views are. Okay, in Angular every view has a component. Okay, we saw the by default view that was there in the browser. That was the core component, the app component of the Angular application, which we started in localhost. Remember, I'll just put it in front of your screen again. Okay, I've not run ngserve. I'll just run it again. Give me a moment. I'll run the ngserve command. So it's running my system. Till the time this ngserve is running, it won't show anything in your browser. As you can see, it says site cannot be reached. Okay, now that I've successfully compiled it, if I refresh it, okay, let me just put up your browser again in front of your screen. Yeah, so now that I've now that it's there, you can see from the terminal also that it's compiled, and now you can see it in your browser that it's there, the application is running. So this is the basic app component that was created in the boilerplate by default, and now we have created another component. Now the first question that comes in your mind is, how to get to this component? How do I display this home page on my application? So that is a concept called routing. We will be covering that in the next video, not in this video. Okay, don't worry, but we'll get to that. But before that, let's do the basic math or the basic homework that is required. Okay, that is creating each and every component of our blog ecosystem that we're trying to create. Okay, so I'll just open up my terminal again. Okay, and I'll one by one I'll just add the components. Okay, so first component was home component, then I'm going to create the blog view component. Notice that I've introduced a dash between the name. Okay, so this is just a convention that is usually followed in Angular. Okay, when I press enter, it creates the blog component for me, blog view component for me, and then I'll create another blog create component, and the last one was blog edit component. Okay, so far I've just generated the component files using the Angular CLI, nothing more than that. Okay, okay, now we'll be moving on to the next parts of the lesson. Okay, let me just skip to that.